Hey everyone, Diavolo here, and in today's video we're going to go over a plethora of topics relating to heavily restriction. I've formulated a pretty insane but what I think to be highly likely way people will achieve Toji Fushiguro's level of heavily restriction. I combat the idea that he was an exception to the rule and instead lay out a more detailed and realistic way I see people unlocking the inner workings of a physically gifted heavenly restriction. But just before we continue, I want to say that if you have any electronics in your room and don't want them to randomly die on you, then subscribe and mash that like button. And let's get into it. I've got a bunch of ideas or theories on how I believe you unlock the full capacity of heavenly restriction and become someone on the levels of the sorcerer killer Toji Fushiguro, something that I believe Maki has just begun to unlock and something that we will see grow and progress with Maki into something similar to Toji's ability throughout the Culling Game arc. I don't believe that just because of the recent addition of chapter 149 and Maki's boost in fighting prowess that I can't see it being on the level of Toji yet, but something similar. But we will get to see all of that happen throughout this final arc hopefully. First I just want to explain what we know currently about the heavenly restriction and its three users we have seen so far in the series with varying levels or degrees of this binding. So currently it is unknown or it hasn't been shown how a heavenly restriction is granted by someone, but we know that it means that a heavenly restriction places a binding on a Jujutsu sorcerer's body at birth. As seen with Kokichi Muta, better known as Mikamaru, it doesn't just necessarily lower the cursed energy in someone's body, but it can also inflict a huge amount of pain to them in return for more cursed energy. Mikamaru explains it perfectly in chapter 38 while fighting Panda. He says, "It's different from the normal binding that you have to do to yourself. It's a binding forced upon you when you're born. I was born without my right arm and anything below my knees. Plus, I don't have any feeling below my waist. My skin is fragile enough to get burnt by moonlight, and I feel like every pore on my body is constantly being stabbed by needles, and as compensation, I have a vast range for my curse powers and firepower above normal." I just wanted to point out that it can also be used for gaining curse power, but at the loss of everything, and always at the detriment of the child who's been chosen to be given a heavenly restriction. This binding, I personally feel like, is always used by selfish Jujutsu clans or families who try to prioritize strength over the personal family bond. That moves us into our next two users who happen to be a part of a family who prioritizes strength over anything. They consider anyone who doesn't have adequate curse levels to be failures. This is the Zenin clan. Maki, the twin of Mai, was considered weaker than Mai at birth and wasn't even able to see curses, let alone Jushiki techniques. The Zenin clan had the preconception that twins are bad omens. Because of this, at birth, Maki received the heavenly restriction that boosted her physical skills, in which result brought down her levels of curse energy to that of a normal civilian. She is often compared to Toji Fushiguro as he is the only other character that has received a heavenly restriction that boosted his physical skills in the series. Toji was slightly different though. Instead of the heavenly restriction just lowering his curse energy to that of a normal human, he was an anomaly who escaped from cursed energy, a human who escaped fate through the power of restriction. Toji wasn't normal. I thought that he had just received this restriction normally at birth and it completely wiped out all of his curse energy. Then naturally from birth he was trained by the Zenin clan into a frightening force. This is still a huge possibility, but I think there are three highly likely paths that Gege could take for Toji's past and how Maki will achieve his level of heavenly restriction. So we just spoke about the first option, and that being that he was just an exception. As the Tengen put it, he was just meant to break fate. The second possibility that I have and was thinking was, like Maki and Mai, Toji also had a twin brother or sister. For both this and my last theory in this, a lot of things will match as these theories are extremely similar, though I do feel this to be the most plausible out of them. So in chapter 149 we got the revelation from Mai that the Zenin family wasn't 100% wrong with their hypothesis when it came to twins. Mai said, "I had it figured out quite a long time ago. The reason why twins are a bad omen for sorcerers. To gain something you have to sacrifice something. This isn't just limited to the binding vow. It's the same principle as getting stronger through painful experiences, but that's just not the case for twins. Because monozygotic twins are considered one individual in the Jujutsu world, you get me? You are me, and I am you. Even if you give it your absolute best to become stronger, it's useless. But I have no intention to become stronger. This means that as long as I'm around, Maki, you'll always be half-assed." This is pretty much stating in my own opinion that the curse energy at birth was split between the two, resulting in Maki and Mai both having an extremely small amount of curse energy, and although the curse energy was split, there must still have remained some kind of link between the two and their curse energy. Then due to this, and Mai never wanting to pursue strength, meant that her side of the connection remained weak, compared to Maki who would have stunted after she reached a certain physical level. This could also be the reason as to why her curse energy wasn't completely gone after the heavenly restriction was placed upon her. I think what happened to Mai and Maki happened to Toji. In the JJK fanbook, it is noted that Gege was asked a question in relation to Toji Fushiguro. This was, when did he begin to distance himself from the Zenin family and what kind of harassment did he receive? In which his reply was, from an early age. Things like getting thrown into a group of cursed spirits. The wound on the mouth was caused by that harassment. This getting thrown into a group of cursed spirits is eerily similar to what is literally just taking place in chapter 149, in which Ogi, Maki's father, throws her along with her sister into a room used for training and punishment. This room contained many grade 2 or lower curses and could have been the exact room that held the cursed spirits Toji was thrown into. Toji could have been thrown into this room with his brother or sister, and things could have played out in a similar way to what happened to Mai and Maki. In this theory, I'm going to play around a little. So imagine Toji and his sister, who I'm just going to call Megami for the purposes I'll get to in a sec, and they're both stuck in the same room, left by Naobita. Maybe Toji is extremely injured, and in this moment his sister or brother, who like Maki, her first love or their first love was their brother or their sister, took the remaining cursed energy with her as she died. We know that twins are bad omens, and could have Toji and say his twin sister or brother been the twins they figured this out with? I thought that also maybe it was the unnamed wife of Toji who was the reasoning for this, but after closer consideration, the timing just wouldn't work, as it seems he was known as the sorcerer killer from a young age, aligning with him leaving the Zenin family also at a young age. I'd assume he probably left around the same age Maki did. I think that Toji's sister was named Megami, as it would line up nicely with Megami being a feminine name and Toji wanting to remember his lost sibling that was the catalyst for his heavenly restriction. So to end off the theory, basically what I'm saying is that I think you have to be a twin to be able to get the levels of Toji Fushiguro through a heavenly restriction. It is something that no one would have been able to know how to complete unless they have been in a pretty much identical situation to both Maki and Mai, and that's why I believe Toji unlocked his levels of strength in an eerily similar way. It's in my eyes something that seems to change the destiny of people and anyone around them through the sacrifice of a bond so close that it's only ever seen between twins. Anyway, I hope you have all enjoyed the video. This took me ages to get all the research needed for the video, so I'd really appreciate if you could drop me a like on the video and leave a comment down below with what you thought of my theory, as I'd love to know. Also, if you have an electronic device in your room, make sure to subscribe or turn it off while you're using it. But for now, it's been your professional degenerate, Devolo, and I'll see you all in a bit. Bye.